river, run, run through the hills. Run, river, run to the sea. Run, river, run to your place beneath the sun. Run, river, run over me.
Hi, this is Jan Lewis. Welcome to be my guest. Today we have all the way from Vermont, we have J.C. Wayne, and she is the founder of the Poartry project. Wait to hear about this. And she's also a poet and a visual artist, and also she has a book out, and it's called Voicing Art, Poetry of Space, Place, and Time. Welcome.
Thank you.
How long did it take you to get here?
Well, if I had come directly, it would have been about just under 4 hours. I made a little detour, so.
Oh, you don't mind that kind of...
Not at all. When it's not pandemic time, I'm pretty much on the road full time. I've crisscrossed the country in my car back and forth, and I used to live in Texas where it takes about 9 hours to get out of the state if you head west. So this is nothing.
I'd probably have to bring a sleeping bag if it's over 2 hours. I am not a good long distance, unless there are places we're going to stop along the way, have something to eat, maybe shop a little bit.
Yep.
Then maybe, but boy, I don't know if I'd be up to going all the way back to the same day. You are amazing.
We enjoy being, for me, always rolling and moving has been one of my greatest creative inspirations.
Okay. Yeah, when we rolled and moved, I think I drove my parents nuts because my father would always have one of those bigger cars, and I'd be in the back. And I didn't like it too well. Finally, they got smart and put me in the front seat with, Mom was in the back. And then there was no problem. But it's the combination of a pipe smoke, they're talking, the car.
Yeah.
They didn't do me any favors.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, JC, when did you found the Poartry project?
So the idea started percolating in about 2018, and then in about February 2019 was when I fully sort of went full-time, made it a thing, gave it a name, and decided to dedicate myself fully to being an artist, to being a poet. I've done poetry and made art for as long as I can remember, but I never really... I had multiple opportunities throughout my life to do it professionally, and for multiple reasons that didn't feel like something I either wanted to do or could do, or circumstances sort of made it difficult. I've always had many interests and many influences, and so I had my lots of hats. But in 2018, 2019, it really felt time to explore a full-time existence as a creator, come from a very artistic family that never they never did anything with it.
They didn't.
No. It's all, it's sort of all, from generation to generation, there was kind of a sense that it was risky. And that's a risk that I was willing to finally take. I did it in my previous incarnation, in my early career, kind of leaping into the void of going out on my own.
Yeah.
And so,
What did you do before this?
Well, I've done many different things. The first thing that I did when I came out of graduate school was that I was actually a futurist. So I did 10-year strategic forecasting out in the Bay Area of California. And then that kind of segued into being in a right place at a right time to become, in 1994, the first and only, for a while, expert in the world on what this whole new Internet World Wide Web thing meant for healthcare. Ooh. And so I was going all over the world, basically teaching doctors and medical companies and healthcare companies and foundations what the implications of patients being able to find information for themselves was going beyond healthcare.
Wow.
And then that kind of segued into becoming a wisdom leadership advisor and consultant to world leaders and presidents of countries and ministers. And
where have you been? Some of the leaders you've met?
I worked with the president of the country of Colombia and 3 of his senior ministers. That was my major world leader gig back when when FARC was really heated up, and he ended up being enveloped in corruption issues, which I think many of them have. Worked with the mayor of Guayaquil in Ecuador as well. So the majority of my South American work was in Ecuador. have worked with the mayor of the city of Houston and lots of the, World Bank, United Nations, International.
No wonder travel is fine for you.
It's in my DNA. My father traveled all over the world.
My father did too, but it wasn't in my DNA. No, he would get after me for why won't you get on a plane? And I always told him, Dad, if you go down in a plane, what are your odds? Okay,
Right.
But if you're in a car accident, there's more of a chance you're going to get to the hospital.
That's a good point.
Yeah, no
That's
thanks.
No.
I was at Dean Martin. The famous Dean Martin couldn't, just like me, he would not get on an elevator. I go on some of them, but the older ones, it ain't going to happen. He called them like a coffin, or in a plane, a flying coffin. We're talking with J.C. Wayne, and she is the founder of the Poartry Project, Poartry, the Poartry Project. She's also a poet and a visual artist. What is your art like? What is it? Is it traditional? Is it abstract?
Good question. So it goes through multiple phases, and I kind of have two hats. So there's one part of the art and poetry that is quite abstract relative. For me, it's not abstract, but for other people, kind of find it abstract. And that whole side is what is this field that I call the cartography of the unseen, which is essentially trying to make visual through words or through visual art the kind of energy and structure behind the form of things. So when you walk into a space or you go to a city and there's just something you vibe with it or you don't, or you feel like you've come home or it feels alien, or you walk into a space and it feels really comfortable and like home, or it doesn't. So there's that whole side, and that in terms of the art is more has been more digital and more geometrical.
Yeah. So you're doing it digitally, right?
Doing it digitally on an iPad with a software. But what I've spent the whole last year and a half doing is moving much more into tactile physical art. I was finding that I'd spent too many years on a computer, too many years on devices, and I really felt like I needed to put my hands on something. My father used to to develop and silk screen his own holiday cards every year, and I really wanted to, get my hands on things. So one of the silver linings of the whole year and a half of pandemic is that the Lake Placid Center for the Arts in Lake Placid, New York, where I used to live and where I had a studio, started offering weekly online art classes with these world-renowned artists for $20.
$20? That's it?
$20. These are teachers who are charging $150 to $350 per class.
I don't think you see that around here.
You don't see it anywhere.
No.
And so it really became. I went to an arts high school in Providence, Rhode Island. So
Was it RISD?
No, it was the Wheeler School for high school.
Oh, okay.
I went to Brown, and I actually was thinking of changing to studio art. And this is a funny story. The guy who had been the academic advisor to my mother and father, who met in studio art at Brown, was still there when I was there. I could not get through an economics course that at the time was a prerequisite for international relations, which was my major. And for 2 seconds, I considered switching to studio art in my senior year.
Yeah.
And he said, "You can do it, but you're going to have to take all your classes at RISD." And I was too scared to go into RISD. I didn't think I was talented enough to go there, so I didn't go. But I went to Wheeler School for high school, and that's all. I spent a lot of time in the art studio.
What college did you go to when you left high school?
Brown.
You went to Brown?
I went to Brown.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to Brown for undergraduate, and I went to a joint diplomacy program between Harvard and Tufts for graduate.
So when
school.
did you decide to say, I want to do this, make it poetry? So it was a combination. Were you drawing one day and doing a poem in your head?
No.
That sounds like something I would pull.
No, I don't even know exactly how it arrived. I was doing primarily poetry, and I had not engaged fully with art, and it was the art classes that I was taking that led me to now what I'm exploring is palette knife. So I'm doing all palette knife, and that's sort of my magic wand in art. I connected with that, and it exploded what I was working on. But I knew that I wanted to focus on the art of words, and I wanted to also incorporate the artistic side of my being, and I just kind of woke up one day when I sort of was tuning in and meditating on what is this thing going to be, and poetry just came into mind.
And that was it?
That was it, and it's been so funny because I have literally had people tell me who come for one of my online classes, you've misspelled poetry.
I can see that. Oh, that's why, Poartry, I want to make sure our viewers know.
Yes.
We're not misspelling it or misstating
Nope.
it. It's a combination of art and poetry.
Exactly.
And you are in the group called Write Action in Vermont, right?
Yes.
That's a writers group.
Yes.
How's that going?
Well, it's very interesting because they are based in Brattleboro, and they're primarily Brattleboro writers and poets. And that just came about because when I was getting poetry off the ground, and my main sort of way of connecting with the community is looking at the various online calendars and newsletters.
Right.
So I just started researching all across the state of Vermont and looking at directories, and New England Foundation for the Arts has the Creative Ground, which is a really, really good resource for anybody out there who is wanting to be in a directory of arts. I just reached out to Write Action, letting them know about the events that I host, and one of the women there was so kind and started adding my events into their newsletter, and that ended up with this year with National Poetry Month.
Yeah.
Brattleboro did poetry around town.
Yeah.
River's poetry around town, or poems around town. I was involved in both Randolph, Vermont's and Brattleboro's, and they were each one or the other. But the long story short is that not long after the National Poetry Month, they had the listing for the opportunity to speak with you. So that's how I found you.
Yeah,
But
I know, but they let you know through the writers
through Write Action, yeah.
about the I had sent them.
Yes.
Yeah, you got any authors or whoever. She's a jack of all trades, art, poetry, and you've worked with some world leaders.
Yep.
How can they get in touch with you?
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share that. The website is poartry.org. That's POARTRY.org. On Instagram, I'm at the Poartry Project. That's the only social media I'm on after getting off all of it in 2014. And email is poartryproject, POARTRY project @gmail.com.
Now, voicing art, poetry of space, place, and time. Did you design the cover?
I did.
Did you drew it yourself?
No, I have to. I shouldn't give away my trade secrets, but there's an incredible website called Visme, VISME, which again I recommend to anybody. So that is a photo. That's a stock photo that is available on Visme.
Mm-hmm.
That image is what I use for my. I created and host a community poetry reading event called Voicing Art Poetry Reading Series, and so that is kind of the logo of that poetry reading series. And I designed it within that's self-published. It's Lulu, and I created the cover, the background in Visme, and then the rest was just the template on Lulu.
I never would have thought, and it's so cool, to combine poetry with art. Now I can see myself. I do abstract, but it's not Zentangle. I was doing this before they came out. It's not just like Zentangle. It's not like one side is this and the other corner is this. It's all flowing, all very intricate. And I'm trying to think, if I was doing that, then you could come up with a poem, or which inspires you first?
That's also an excellent question, and it depends. So I have written poems inspired by my art, and then I also write poems that I then turn into art, that I accompany with art. So it's really both. But the Voicing Art Poetry Reading Series is specifically ekphrastic poetry, which is art-inspired poetry.
So it's a series.
So this book is based on 3 different things. One is another art-inspired ekphrastic series that I've been involved in Houston, Texas since 2010.
Yeah.
The second piece is poems that I've generated from my own Voicing Art Poetry Reading Series.
Right.
And the third section is poems that are basically inspired by my travels and particular spaces.
You are amazing. We're talking with J.C. Wayne, and she's the founder of Poartry Project, and she's a poet and a visual artist. I know, I wrote it right down here. I was going to say, do you have a book? And she brings a book. And you're getting out. Well, it's still pretty new, right, your book?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you're open to if somebody would like you to come and speak, Tell them again how they can reach you.
Yes, I would love to be able to share the book and to read from it at any point. So I can be reached at Poartry Project, Poartry project @gmail.com, or via the website poartry.org.
Were you a poet as a kid?
I have been told that I came out doing poetry. I have to say that I started writing and reading extremely young. Actually, my visual art preceded. There was a piece that my grandmother kept framed by the side of her bed that I did when I was 1 that looked like a Cézanne, but for whatever reason the poetry ended up being nurtured more. I was doing poetry very young. I was very, I think I was kind of born an adult, so I wasn't ever very kid-like. I think I'm more kid-like now than I was then.
Yeah, it happens.
It does, doesn't
Right
it?
here.
It flips. But I was a very serious and earnest kind of student and voracious reader from a very young age. And my big breakthrough as a poet came in elementary school. I was really bored with these sort of childish little rhyming poems we were doing. Of course, I think actually writing a good rhyme scheme poem is one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
But at that time it felt kind of babyish, and I was looking at, I was already at that age kind of straining for my original voice, and went on an extremely hot, like I remember it like it was yesterday, extremely hot August day to Walden Pond. And I was so moved by that visit, and when I got back from Walden Pond, I got another one of what I thought was these inane elementary school poetry assignments, and I had total writer's block for the first time in my life.
Right.
And I was thinking on it, and I had this breakthrough of creating an onomatopoeic, non-rhyme scheme, total free verse poem about Walden Pond, and that was, I consider that sort of my birth as a poet, even though I was doing it from a very, very young age.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So, in high school, was there like a newsletter that you got to write and draw?
No, actually, after elementary school, I really didn't write a lot of poetry at all. I did occasionally. There were a few things that I was working on. I started a poem when I was 13 or 14 called The Table that was trying to, I actually just finished it last year. It took me 41 years to write the poem.
When you were in 3rd grade?
Yeah. So I started, we had family members start to die, and the table, the table at Thanksgiving started to have empty spaces, and then it would be filled with a new, boyfriend or girlfriend or a new, partner, or, so that, I was trying to get at that. And there was one other poem I wrote when I was 14, but aside from that, I really didn't, I didn't stay very connected with it. It moved more in high school into memorizing poetry, which I just didn't find particularly juicy. I really admire the people who can do it, but it wasn't where I found my fire. And then I started to reconnect with it in graduate school and the year after graduate school, but it was that kind of like poetry that I would sort of burn now. It was kind of like the release valve for all the emotional turmoil. And so I had a complicated relationship with it at that point because I wanted to create beauty with it, and it was sort of like the cesspool. So I really didn't, I stayed away from it for a long time. My professor at Brown really tried to convince me to pursue it. He was the poet laureate of Rhode Island. I was very fortunate. Michael Harper, I was just talking about him on the way up here. And he met me in the San Francisco airport the year after I graduated from graduate school, and he had a letter in his pocket, and he said, "This is the letter to the head of the poetry program at Stanford. She's already accepted you for a PhD."
Oh my God. So you went to Stanford?
I didn't even look at that letter. I tore it up and threw it away.
You didn't want to go to Stanford?
I didn't want to be a poet. I did
You
not.
wanted to do both?
I did not believe that it was something that I had enough skill to do, even though it was so, it was so natural to me. It was like breathing. But I didn't feel that I had what it took to be a professional. I wasn't moved to go into academia. I was an excellent student, but I didn't feel that I was an original thinker. And that's been a whole journey of getting past that.
So before you founded Poartry,
Yep.
the project. Were you working in corporate America at all?
No, I had stepped away from corporate America in 1999, more or less. I had started my own consulting company with the internet. That dribbled on till about 2002, I want to say. But I've always had a really good sense for the future, which is why I was a good futurist. And I sensed in about 2000 that what we saw happen with the internet and what we've seen happen with social media was going to happen to the internet. And it did. The bubble burst and I got out before that. I had a series of events that completely shifted my life, that started me asking different questions, that started me asking universal questions. Why am I here? Where did I come from? Where do we go? I've always had a great sense of purpose, but I still, at the age of 28, like even in the midst, I was quite famous in my field with this whole internet thing. And I still felt at that time that there was something more I was supposed to do. So I ended up studying a lot of wisdom traditions, studying with teachers who were teachers of wisdom traditions, and despite the fact that that was never a field that I thought I would end up exploring. I ended up basically working with initiatives, trying to bring more wisdom, trying to bring more universal frameworks to kind of navigate the types of divisions that we're seeing today. So for about 9 years, I would say a student that was also helping to set up international organizations for wisdom leadership, primarily in South America, because I was the only one who spoke fluent Spanish.
Leadership, I love that. I like that. That's something that really, I relate to that,
I really enjoyed that. It was fascinating trying to bring wisdom, sort of wisdom concepts into leadership. But I had already started doing it in my internet consultancy. I think the handwriting was on the wall. This is a bit of a shaggy dog story, but kind of what prompted all of this, or was one ping in all of it. When I was 28, 27, I had a massive ski accident and I completely destroyed my right leg.
You had a what?
A ski accident, and I destroyed my right leg.
God. Where were you skiing?
California.
Oh my God.
Big mountain, California.
So you had a skiing accident.
I
Did you end
did.
up in the hospital, surgery?
I ended up in the hospital, surgery, rebuilt my knee. I was lucky to have the team doctor for the San Francisco Giants and the 49ers reconstructed my knee with a very revolutionary surgery. So I have a good strong right knee.
Yeah.
But it got me asking a lot of questions. And so one of the things that ended up happening in the midst of all of this was I had the opportunity to return to horseback riding for a friend. I had been an equestrian here in New England, and I needed a quick way to get my flexibility back because I stopped competitive riding when I was 18, and I thought I was in good shape, and I got back on a horse at 30, and I was like, this body's different. So I woke up one morning with the word yoga in my head, and I was kind of negotiating with myself. I was like, you have got to be kidding. Yoga people are weird. They're crunchy granola hippies. I mean, I was totally type A, corporate type, and I was like, I will not do yoga. But of course, I was also doing research on the internet. Let me go out on the internet, find it. I found some yoga breathing things you could do at your desk, and it totally worked for me. So I had a panel of high-powered Johnson & Johnson, all male, all older executives in their uniformed gray three-piece suits, and I did yoga breathing with them in a strategic planning retreat up at Mohonk Mountain in New York, and they loved it. And
Fantastic.
so it was such a change. And so, long story short, that led me to bringing more of these kinds of understandings, more natural approaches to things, more sort of the things that are obvious in the East, and that I think maybe COVID are trying to tell us a little bit about. And so I was in sort of student mode and helping mode for 9 years, and then the decade after that, my partner and I went out on our own, and we have been doing more work on really developing frameworks for building bridges of understanding that are based more on an understanding of the energetic ecology of the energies and forces that shape our world.
Have you heard of goat yoga?
I have heard of goat yoga. I've seen goat yoga.
Have you tried it?
I have not tried it.
I don't know what to make of it. I just don't know.
Some people swear it works. I think that there is something for everyone. The more I trek through life, the more I believe that there is literally something for
Well, if it's like a
everyone.
massage, I'm all for it.
I think that's probably...
But I don't think it would improve me with my yoga, because I could just do, I studied with an Indian lady, and I was the only blonde, blue-eyed Anglo-Saxon in the room. But they just adapted me. They were
That's
just
great.
right in.
Wonderful.
And I just loved it so much. One day and she says, you weren't asleep. She said, you were in deep meditation. I'm like, I don't agree with her, but okay. I don't know if I'd want a goat on my back, unless it's a good massage, and then I'm all for it.
Right.
What do you think?
I don't know. Having not really observed it, I can't quite imagine, what the appeal is, but I know it's got to have some, so.
It's got to have something.
Yeah.
Where are you going to appearing coming up? Where are you going to be?
It's kind of up in the air, so I've got a few more things going. This has been a very, very busy month, and so I've been all over the place, so I'm kind of taking a little bit of a break. I've got one more mentoring event in Burlington for kids, which is close to my heart. I do that work a lot. And then I split my time between Vermont and Chicago, and so we're kind of keeping an eye on what's happening when things being open or closed. It's likely if Delta doesn't take over, that then I may cycle over to Chicago and spend 2 months there. I will be back teaching at River Arts in Morrisville, Vermont, the last week of October, last Wednesday of October, and then all of the Wednesdays of November except Thanksgiving week.
It's awesome. We've been talking with J.C. Wayne, and she is the founder of the Poartry Project. She's a poet and a visual artist. And again, how can they reach you, J.C.?
Thank you. I can be reached at the Poartry Project website. That's POARTRY.org. On Instagram at the Poartry Project, and via email at Poartry, POARTRY project @gmail.com.
There are so many places that you can go that you're not going to have to travel much past New England, New York maybe, and that type of thing. The world is your oyster, because you're both an artist, a poet, and you're now an author.
Yes.
And the book alone, I mean, this is ageless.
Yeah.
You could go to a senior center and they'll love it. You could go to a high school, they'll be interested, a college, all these different places. I think it's wonderful, and that you're reaching out to children too.
Yeah.
Because they don't teach poetry and art together in school.
Right.
In fact, haven't many schools cut down on the art?
Yes, and that was
really is bad.
That was actually one of my main motivations for creating the
It
Poartry
was.
Project, because I can't stand seeing the arts going away.
I can't either. I hate it. You said you were drawing when you were 1 year old.
Yeah.
Mom said to me, as soon as you got a pencil in your hand, you were off and running. So probably, I'm guessing, maybe about your age, or 2 or 3,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
And now you address it using leadership skills with corporate gentlemen, right?
Yeah.
That must have been a real trip seeing them like it.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful, but I have to say, that was a phase in my life where working with people in power was very important to me. And I have to say, I've traveled to every state in the U.S. except Alaska and counting. I have been to and lived in 23 countries. I have worked with world leaders and world organizations, and there is nothing that has been more important to me than the work that I've done with traumatized children of refugee families in Burlington, Vermont.
Oh, I hear you.
Between the ages of 6 and 9. That is just, that is a priceless work.
So you don't use your poetry technique in that particular. You wear different hats, so you can do the kind of a meditation, breathing type of thing. Right? And then also for the leadership. Well, you were showing these men. I can just see them. I've been to so many corporate where you're sitting there, and everybody's buttoned up.
Yep.
And I can just see all these guys do it. And did any of them fall asleep?
You took the words right out of my mouth.
I bet.
So many of them did. And that is, one of the first things you learn in meditation.
Yeah.
especially if it's combined with sort of spiritual training of any kind, is that is essentially you kind of making contact with higher planes of consciousness that are beyond the kind of hardware of the brain. And
yeah, nothing relaxed me like this, the Indian meditation. Nothing.
no, it's incredible. And I have a TEDx talk, and the TEDx talk I gave was it was an art, music, and poetry piece, performance piece called Deus Ex Machina: Evolution in 4 Acts. And the central thesis of that is that the mind, which most humans think is the pinnacle, is just the ground floor.
Fascinating. Boy, you get ever on again and again. You have this whole unique approach to the arts.
Yeah.
And I've never met somebody who combined poetry and... Do you happen to know James Nicola? He's from New York City. He's a director and a poet.
The name is familiar, but I'm not familiar with
Always
his
wears
work.
a hat like... I can't describe. Did you ever know Christina Bell over in Rhode Island?
Yes.
You knew Christina?
Yes.
Oh my God, this is a
Yes.
small world. We'll talk
Yeah.
more about it later.
Yeah.
We're going to have her back. J.C. Wayne, founder of the Poartry Project. She's a poet and visual artist, and she came to visit us today all the way from Vermont. Now that takes courage. You don't want to travel with me for 4 hours because we're probably going to be stopping every hour or so. I don't know how did you stop to eat or whatever?
I have to say we stopped because we were early, and our ETA was early to the Fuller Craft Museum, and so we stopped in Manchester for coffee. That was it.
Coffee.
Coffee.
And that didn't make you...
Nope. Nope.
Oh, I wish I was like that. If I had coffee without food,
Uh-huh.
I'd be a goner.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to close. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, Jan, for having me. It's been a total pleasure, and I'm happy to come back anytime.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good. I think it's marvelous that she came all the way from there. See you next time and be my guest.
Moving through the cloudless sky, heading out toward the moon. I am dancing to the lunar tune.